Imagine this. A lonely ex-soldier on a desert world living in silence, cut off from the galaxy. One stormy night, there's a knock at his door. Outside, not raiders, not smugglers, two alien sisters and their frail grandmother, desperate, terrified, and on the run. By morning, his life, and perhaps the future of entire star systems, would never be the same. Because sometimes history doesn't change in grand halls or on battlefields. Sometimes it begins with a stranger opening the door. Hey friends, if this story already has your heart racing, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good, humans are special tale. It's the best way to keep these HFY stories alive and growing, and trust me, you won't want to miss where this one goes. The desert planet of Taro was not kind to loners. The winds could strip flesh, the storms could eat machines, and the silence could drive a man insane. But Ray Mercer had survived far worse. 15 years of combat service during the frontier wars had taught him to endure. And after the wars chewed him up and spat him out, exile seemed almost peaceful. His workshop, a half-buried military bunker, rattled as the evening storm built its fury outside. Inside, Ray leaned over a moisture evaporator, tightening the final bolt with steady, scarred hands. He muttered to himself, "That should hold," and wiped grease and sweat across his brow. This was his life now. Repairs, whiskey, silence. No commanders, no battles, no politics, and yet, storms on Taro had a way of unearthing things. He poured himself a glass of Martian whiskey, the amber glow catching in the low light. The howling wind outside was a lullaby he'd grown used to, but then something broke the pattern. A sound that didn't belong. Knocking. Ray froze. Nobody sane would wander in this weather. He set his glass down, slid open the drawer, and tucked a pulse pistol into the waistband of his oil-stained tank top. Habit. Old soldiers never quite stop preparing for the worst. The knock came again, sharper this time. He moved to the control pad and pulled up the exterior camera. Static blurred the feed. But there, 3 figures, small and huddled, pressed against his heavy door. Not raiders. Raiders didn't bring children. Ray muttered a curse, then disengaged the locks and braced against the storm as he pulled open the door. Sand whipped into his face, but what he saw drove the sting from his eyes. 2 alien children with skin the color of a clear sky, hair white as falling snow, and behind them, a frail grandmother, her silver strands dulled, her body weak with sickness. The older child, maybe 9 in human years, stepped forward, shielding the younger one. Her almond-shaped eyes shimmered like opals. She spoke halting standard, her voice strong despite the wind. "Please, my grandmother is sick, we need shelter." The younger girl peeked from behind her sister's arm, innocent eyes filled with desperate hope. Ray hesitated only a heartbeat. Then he stepped aside. "Quickly, get in." They scrambled inside and the storm swallowed the door behind them. The grandmother nearly collapsed and Ray caught her in his arms, startled by how light she felt, like lifting dry leaves. Her voice rasped. "Thank you." "Name's Ray," he said, helping her to the couch. "I am Anine," she whispered. "These are my granddaughters, Fina and Tira." Fina, the older one, stood firm, protective, never lowering her guard. Little Tira was already staring at his workshop tools with wide-eyed curiosity. Kids adapt fast, Ray thought grimly. "You're Australis," Ray said. The blue-skinned telepathic species was rare this far out. "What are you doing on Taro?" Anine coughed, the sound rattling her chest. "We had no choice. Our settlement was attacked." Ray stiffened. "By what?" "The Vorax," Fina said, and her voice trembled with hatred. Ray's stomach knotted. He'd fought Vorax before, nightmare shock troops, savage and unstoppable. The peace treaty was supposed to cage them, but treaties rarely reached the rim. He boiled water while the family huddled. Anine explained. They had been researching desert flora when the Vorax came. Her daughter, Fina and Tira's mother, stayed behind to hold them off. She never made it out. Ray glanced at the children. Tira's lip trembled at the memory of her mother. Fina's fists clenched in silent defiance. Something inside Ray shifted. He had buried compassion under years of scars, but tonight it rose, sharp and undeniable. "You're safe here," he said, and surprised himself with how much he meant it. "I'll fix you something to eat." The meal was simple, but the girls devoured it, exhaustion written on their faces. Anine's breathing grew weaker. She tried to protest when Ray offered them his room, but he wouldn't hear of it. "Take the bed, I'll use the couch." Later, as the storm screamed outside, Ray lay awake, staring at the shadows of his workshop ceiling. He had lived alone for so long, convinced solitude was his shield. But now, with 3 aliens asleep under his roof, something stirred in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. A sense of purpose. But the galaxy had a cruel way of testing such choices. Just before dawn, a sound cut through the silence. Engines, not harvesters, not transports. The guttural growl of scavenger thrusters. Ray's eyes snapped open, soldier instincts flooding back. He rolled off the couch, grabbed his pistol, and checked the monitor. 3 ships had landed nearby, insectoid silhouettes bristling with weapons. Krell scavengers, vultures of the galaxy. Ray's jaw tightened. Krell didn't just take salvage, they took people, especially Australis. Behind him, soft footsteps. Fina stood in the shadows, her hair a tangle from sleep, her opal eyes wide with dread. "They found us," she whispered. Ray turned, pulse pistol heavy in his grip. "Then we make sure they regret it." The sun hadn't yet risen over Taro's dunes when the scavengers came. Ray braced himself against the cold steel of his workbench, heart pounding as the Krell landed outside. Through the camera feed, their hulking forms came into focus. 7-foot insectoid raiders, armored exoskeletons gleaming, weapons bristling with cruel intent. He turned to Fina. "Wake your grandmother and sister, get them into the panic room." "You can't fight them alone," she argued, her small fists clenched. Ray almost smiled. This kid had more backbone than some soldiers he'd known. "I've faced worse odds. Now move." The girl hesitated, then nodded. Ray punched a code into a storage locker. The hiss of hydraulics revealed armor he hadn't touched in years. Chestplate, tactical gauntlets, an assault rifle built for war. He strapped them on, the weight both familiar and heavy with old ghosts. Anine stumbled from the bedroom, pale as frost. "Leave me. Save the children." Ray tightened the final strap on his armor. "Not happening." The door shuddered as Krell claws struck it. Sparks rained across the workshop. Little Tira clung to her grandmother's robe. "Are the bedbugs here?" she asked in a trembling voice. Ray crouched, meeting her wide eyes. "Yeah, sweetheart, but they won't get past me." Another thunderous impact rattled the frame. Ray pushed them toward the panic room, sealing it just as the outer door exploded inward in a shower of metal. The first Krell stepped inside, mandibles clacking, eyes scanning. Ray steadied his rifle, waited for 3 to enter, then fired. The deafening bursts lit the room. One alien collapsed in a spray of yellow ichor. Another fell seconds later. The rest roared, energy weapons scorching the walls. Ray ducked, rolled, returned fire. Tools clattered, machinery hissed, smoke filled the air. "Give us the Australis," one Krell growled in broken standard. "You may live." Ray ejected a spent clip, snarling. "That's not very neighborly." He reached into his vest, thumbed a device, an old sonic disruptor, and slid it across the floor. The moment it activated, the Krell shrieked, clutching their heads in agony. Ray didn't waste the opening. 2 more fell before the device sputtered out. The last Krell, massive and snarling, charged. Ray's rifle clicked empty. The alien slammed him against the wall, claws tightening around his throat. Ray gasped, vision darkening. But his hand found his combat knife. With a final surge, he drove the blade deep into the creature's joint. It screeched, stumbled, and Ray finished it with his pistol at point-blank range. Silence, except for Ray's ragged breathing. Blood dripped down his leg where the armor had split, but he staggered to the panic room. 7392, he rasped. The door slid open. Fina's eyes widened at his wounds. "You're hurt. I've had worse," Ray muttered, But Tira hugged him fiercely, her small arms clutching his waist. "You saved us." Ray awkwardly patted her hair, unprepared for the warmth that filled his chest. He wasn't used to being needed anymore. Before he could say more, a new sound filled the air, engines descending. He limped to the camera feed, expecting Krell reinforcements. But no, sleek curves, silver and blue hull, an Australis diplomatic ship. The girls gasped. "Mama!" Ray barely had time to react before they bolted past him, racing into the open as the ship's ramp lowered. A woman stepped down, tall, graceful, her hair flowing like liquid starlight. Her daughters flung themselves into her arms, sobbing with joy. Anine whispered, tears in her eyes. "My daughter, Celine. She's alive." Ray stood there, battered and bloodied, suddenly feeling like an intruder in their reunion. But then Celine looked up, her luminous eyes meeting his. She took in the carnage, the scars, the way he stood guard even now. "You risked your life for my family?" she asked softly. Ray shrugged. Anyone would have. Her gaze deepened. "No, not anyone. Humans, perhaps." And in that moment, Ray understood what had shifted inside him overnight. By opening his door to strangers, he hadn't just sheltered a family. He had stepped into something larger, an alliance, a conspiracy, maybe even a destiny. Morning had come, and nothing would ever be the same. So what do you think? Would you have opened the door that night? Or would you have turned away, not knowing that your choice could change the fate of entire worlds? Ray Mercer's story reminds us why HFY, humans are special. Stories resonate so deeply, not because we're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because when it counts, humans choose compassion. And sometimes compassion is the sharpest weapon in the galaxy. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more epic HFY adventures, and share it with someone who loves seeing humanity shine among the stars. Until next time, stay legendary.